thought I'd show you the truck that I own and drive. This is a 2004 Peterbilt. It's a 379 model. 379 back then meant it had the long flat hood. That was what I liked, and I was comfortable with the long hood trucks. They don't turn quite as well, but I found that they always had better resale value. So that was one of the reasons I like the long hood, and there's room underneath to work because the engine isn't cramped into the frame rails from front to back. There's room to get in there and work. I have 11/24/5 rubber. I preferred the higher rubber for when I operated down in Arizona in the hot climate, so more air could flow and get underneath the truck. And the more air you've got passing underneath the truck, the cooler the transmission and the rad and the oil pan, all of those will operate more coolly if they've got airflow. Spec'd all aluminum rims. Not so much for the weight advantage, although there is a weight advantage to them, but I spec the truck more for resale value, and I've been very happy with the rims. It's a little more work to keep them up, but the truck inside has the higher end interior, the leather interior and the full gauge package. It's their top of the line stuff inside, and again I find I get that back in resale value. Were I speccing a new truck today, this is not the truck that I would spec, but back in 2003 when I was having this truck built, this was what I felt was the best route to go. I've always bought PACCAR trucks, either Kenworths or Pete's, always long hood trucks, and what I would do is design the spec that I wanted and then shop it to both Kenworth and Pete, and whoever gave me the better price is the truck that I would buy, and that always worked well for me. The truck is a 280 wheelbase, has 150 gallon fuel tanks on it. The wheelbase is a little longer than most, but I find it improves the ride. It gives you better swing dip clearance from the trailer, so you don't ever have to worry about whacking the trailer when you're jackknifing the truck around. And again, I find resale value in that. And you can hang storage boxes on the frame or generators or whatever you need to do, so you've got room to carry more equipment. I'm the kind of guy that likes to carry just about everything you might ever need rather than buy it on the road, so I've got extra storage there. Truly the only thing that I've modified on this truck is the exhaust system, and it was done by 4 states in Joplin, Missouri, and I found that when I went to the bigger exhaust system, these are 7-inch pipes with a muffler underneath, I found the perometer ran cooler, the truck ran cooler, and my fuel mileage went up almost a half a mile to the gallon. So, aesthetically, I like them, but functionality wise, they've been a good improvement too. And it's, it's not cheap to do it, but it's been worthwhile for me anyway. Other than that, the truck is stock. It has a 475 Caterpillar motor. This truck has over 1 million miles on it, and I've had no trouble with the engine. It's been a great engine, but I'm meticulous with the service. I change the oil every 12,000 miles, and that's been returned to me because it's given me no engine trouble at all. Has an 18-speed transmission and 370 rears, and I find that's just a nice setup for all-around versatility. The truck is geared low enough that it pulls well in the hills, and yet I can slip it into the top cog, and at 60 miles an hour, which is where I like to cruise, it's turning about 1250 to 1300. So it's not turning large high revolutions. Helps the motor last longer. Maybe that's part of the reason it's gone so far with no trouble. It doesn't run high RPM ever. One of the things I did too is I spec'd the flat top bunk, and I've always had flat top bunks, and really I just care for the look of them more, and I found that the resale value on flat top was better. these days, that's one of the things I would change if I were speccing a new truck. I'd spec a high bunk, not so much for the room inside, but for the aerodynamics on the outside, since fuel mileage now is so critical. And a flat top bunk does hurt your fuel mileage. One of the things I did when I built this truck was I spec'd dual tires on the drives rather than super singles. Now back then, super singles, I think they were available, but they weren't popular. Now they've become extremely popular, and I truly do believe that they probably save a little bit of fuel. However, I'm leery of them, and if I were speccing a new truck, I'd still go with the dual tires. I was in a TA in southern Utah getting a tire repaired, and I was surprised at how many of the super single rims that these guys had in stock. So I asked the fella about it. He says, my best moneymaker, when these guys blow a super single out here, the axle drops immediately to the pavement and chews the rim and ruins the rim. So now, not only am I selling a tire, I'm selling a rim. So he says, between the road call, the pricey super single and the pricey rim, he says, I'm making a fortune off these guys. And I thought, oh boy, there's a valuable lesson. So this is the interior of my 379 Peterbilt. It's fairly loaded up. It's a 2004. It's got the leather seats, air-ride seats both sides. It's a flat top Pete, as you can see. The leather interior, the door panels and stuff. Well, it's not really true leather. It's just a plastic they call leather. My 18-speed transmission here. I've got a full gauge package because I always like to know what's going on with my fuel, my transmission temperature, my diffs. I like to know where everything is in case I run into some sort of mechanical problem. I can perhaps spot it coming before it breaks me down on the side of the road. And I've got a tilt steering wheel. I prefer the tilt over the tilt and telescope because the tilt and telescope tends to rattle after a while. They loosen up and they rattle, and I hate rattles. And the wood steering wheel. I find the wood steering wheel is much more comfortable over a long day than the leather wrap steering wheel. For some reason, it's just easier on the hands, I guess, because you don't sweat or whatever. But it's just nicer if you have to hang on to it for 14 hours a day. It's just a more comfortable feel. I've got something else too that I really like, and I spec in all my trucks, is the outside temperature gauge. And I really like that because that tells me A, how the truck engine is running temperature-wise in relation to the outside temperature, and B, when it starts to turn cold, it'll give me an indication that the correct conditions are forming, so I may get ice on the road, and it gives me kind of a heads up as to whether or not I've got to start worrying about ice. I really like that. That's an option when you got a special order that, but that's well worth the money, in my opinion anyway. This is the flat top Pete bunk. I've got the window in the back. I like the window because it lets light in back there. The downside is when it's really cold and I'm sleeping back there, the window is a cold spot. So it hurts the insulation factor of the bunk. I like the flat top bunk for resale and appearance, but for functionality wise, it's not quite so handy, simply because you just can't stand up in it. I can. So if I crimp my neck, I can stand up that much. But you can see that's probably not too comfortable on the neck. And I'm not a tall fellow. I'm 5'10". So there's the disadvantage of the flat top bunk. But some guys come back here to live and camp out for days at a time if they're laid over somewhere. The only reason I ever come back here is to sleep. So so I don't need to be standing up. I'm just back here to lie down and have a rest. So the flat top bunk always worked well for me. It's got closets on either side for clothing, hanging my clothing up, and it's got little cupboards above the shelves for my stuff. Anything from, I've got flashlights, that type of thing up there. Anything I need, paperwork supplies for when I'm doing my invoicing, that type of thing. Just a little extra storage here. Here's a TV shelf back there. I don't have a TV, but I do have my laptop computer back there, and I've got it plugged into a power inverter, so I can run my PC Miler program, so I can figure out how many miles a day I've got to go, or how far it is from point A to point B, and I find that very handy too. And it helps me with my invoicing, because when I'm billing, I know how far it is from point A to point B, and I calculate by the mile. It tells me how much I can bill, so it's handy for that. Something else I really like about this truck, this isn't the factory seat. I ended up wearing out the factory seat. The truck's got over 1 million miles on it, so I ended up replacing the factory seat when it wore out with a new one. And this is a wide ride Bostrom seat with the low base in it. And boy, it's a whole lot more comfortable than the factory seat. And it wasn't out of the way price wise. I paid $900, and boy, it sure is a nice seat. If you've got to sit all day and drive, it's very, very comfortable. I wish, really, I wish I'd had the money to do both of them so they match exactly, but they don't. They're close enough, and it's a very comfortable seat. I can't say enough good about this make of seat, and I'm very, very satisfied with the make of the chair here. This truck, because of the year of it, is no longer legal in California, and I ran California steadily for years with this truck, but with the rates in California, and I don't run California, and part of the problem is the regulations are becoming so stringent, it's not worth your while, or my while anyway, financially, to do it. So I don't worry about it. I just stay where I can keep making money, and that's what I've done. This truck now is, well, almost 11 years old. I generally don't keep trucks that long, but I have in this case. I've always watched to see what the truck was costing me in maintenance, and then decided whether it was worth it to have a truck payment or keep going and repairing. This one's been a very good truck, and I'm glad I've hung on to it. I wouldn't spec a new truck these days. They're having so much trouble with the emissions equipment on them, and you pay for that too. So truly, these days, if I were to spec and build a new truck, I would go the glider kit. I would get a rolling glider, which is everything except the engine, and I'd rebuild this motor and install it in the glider rather than put up with the emissions engines today that they're having so much trouble with. When I've spec'd and had my trucks built, I've always gone with specs and equipment that's been tried and true already. And I know sometimes certain salesmen will steer you towards the latest, greatest thing that's come down the pike, such as super singles or whatever. And sometimes those guys are getting an incentive for selling more and more of, whatever product they're trying to push.